Hello, I'm Linda, and this is No Frills ASMR. It's right now the week after Thanksgiving, and over the week I watched some movies and some shows. So I thought we could talk about that a little bit. And the main one that I think people in the community page said they wanted to talk about was the movie Wicked, which I saw in theaters. So I thought we could talk about that along with a couple other things I watched. And depending on how much time we have, some things I'm looking forward to. So, but we'll start with Wicked. Why not? I just want to preface this by saying I totally get it if you're disappointed when I tell you that, well, I shouldn't even say that. I liked it, guys. I liked it. But I have some thoughts about it. And I don't want anybody to be like, oh no, I loved it so much, because I could totally understand if you loved it so much too. How's that? But I didn't know anything about Wicked before going into this movie. I have not seen the Broadway productions or any production of it. I had not read the book. I hadn't even discussed it with anyone ever. And I'm not like on TikTok or like those kind of things that I guess my son was telling me, oh, you know all the songs. I did not know a single song. Like, I had never even heard them before. So I don't know if that's just comes with being an old fogey or what, but I did not. I did not know any of them. So that's to begin with. Now, what I do know quite a bit about is the movie The Wizard of Oz, which originally came out in 1939, the same year as Gone with the Wind, which is crazy when you think about how they're both such huge movies of the time for years beyond. Like, I was born in the 70s, and both those movies would be television events. Like, everybody would watch them once a year, you know. I think especially Wizard of Oz. And in fact, when I was in college, my roommate was obsessed with, well, two things, Disney and Wizard of Oz. She loved it. She had the videotape, and we'd watch it pretty often. And she had a movie poster on her wall. And I think she named her hamster Dorothy, if I remember correctly. So there's that. And so while watching Wicked, I kept trying to like pull the story into the Wizard of Oz in my head, like look for clues to that. And that's kind of interesting, because in the Wizard of Oz, Dorothy, she's in Kansas and there's a tornado, and she ends up getting hit in the head and goes unconscious and has a dream, and her dream is the land of Oz. And when she wakes up in the dream, within the dream, which by the way is so cool because there might be spoilers to Wizard of Oz here, but in the original beginning of the movie, when she's in Kansas still, it's black and white. Now, movies all the way into the 60s were filmed in black and white. And that year, 1939, when Gone with the Wind and Wizard of Oz were released, I think they may have been some of the very first or the first color movies. But the beginning of Wizard of Oz, which takes place in not a dream state, but in her real life, in Dorothy's real life, it's black and white. And you meet her, I don't exactly remember, but you meet the old lady who lives up the road, who claims that Dorothy's dog, Toto, has bitten her. And she takes Toto and puts him in her basket and says she's going to take her away. And Toto escapes, I believe. And you meet a, like, what did they used to call them? Like a barker or a fortune teller, whatever he was, a snake oil salesman kind of guy who shows up. And he looks into his crystal ball and tells Dorothy, like, something bad's going to happen. But he says, but don't worry about that. You know, kind of like, so you'll pay for more information. And I guess we meet her uncles and her mom. I'm trying to remember. But anyway. But then that's black and white. And then the tornado happens. And then you wake up to her swirling around in her house. And it crashes to the ground. And it kills a wicked witch. And her legs are hanging out under the house. And at that moment, it goes into color. And can you imagine in the 1930s being at the movie theater, expecting the whole movie to be black and white and have it suddenly burst into this, and I don't mean subtle color. This thing was bright, bright, bright hues, bright colors. And that leads to one of my complaints with Wicked. But we'll talk about that in a minute. So when she comes out, the Munchkins are all singing, you know, Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead, because her house has fallen on one of the wicked witches, the Wicked Witch of the East. But the Wicked Witch of the sister, is the Wicked Witch of the West, who is still alive and is a very, very scary character when you're a kid in The Wizard of Oz. The Wicked Witch of the West is a real villain, and she has flying monkeys who travel around with her, and it is terrifying when you're a kid. And I haven't seen Wizard of Oz in a lot of years, but I have very clear memories of being extremely frightened of the Wicked Witch of the West. And she would go after Dorothy's dog, and she'd go, "I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog too." And she was so scary. Very scary. And just a villain. There was no nice about her. She was a villain. Okay. And then there was Glenda the Good Witch, who was like blonde and pretty and sweet. And then they go to the land of Oz. She meets the Tin Man, the Lion, and the Scarecrow. And that's it, right? And the four of them go follow the Yellow Brick Road to meet Oz. And they're all looking for different things. Okay. That is what I was kind of like when this started. I was like, okay, so this movie, I don't know, I guess I don't want to spoil it, so I better be careful. But it is like a prequel to The Wizard of Oz. And it begins much like The Wizard of Oz, with a wicked witch having been killed or having, died. And all the, they used to be called Munchkins, I guess they still are, were singing, basically Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead. But I think they had a different version in Wicked, I can't recall. And Glenda the Good Witch shows up. And Glenda is played by, I'm going to say her name wrong, aren't I? Ariana Grande? Is it Grande or Grand? Ariana Grande. I don't know. She, I thought, was wonderful as Glenda the Good Witch. The way she did this thing, that was part of the character, where she flips her hair back. I loved it. I was cracking up. She's great. I think she's great. I should have written down the names of the actors. I don't know anybody. I'm sorry, I didn't write that down. I should have made some note. But so then I don't want to spoil anything. I don't know how to do this without spoiling. But basically, they end up trying to think whether I should just go ahead and spoil it or what. Well, there's this. There's a few stories going on, and we have Glenda, and then Glenda remembers back to her youth and how she knew the witch who has more recently been. Sorry, there's a cat. I'm going like this because there's a cat hair on the phone. Has been recently killed. Who they're all like, yay, the Wicked Witch is dead. And that's the Wicked Witch of the West. And she says, yes, I used to be friends with her, but it was a long time ago and we were in school. And then they kind of do like a dream sequence back to when they were in school together. And there's sort of a whole plot about this little girl being born with green skin and she has special powers. I don't think that's really spoiling it too bad. It's a little story, but it's not. And then they end up going to school together, and they are kind of frenemies, but then they kind of become more like actual friends. And there is a very and the character's name is it Alphaba, and that is played by, oh my gosh, what is her name? Arrivo, is it Arrivo? Anyway, you guys all know. She's great. She was really good, I thought. And so she's the one character, and then Glenda. So they're like the Wicked Witch of the West and the Glenda the Good Witch that we know from Wizard of Oz. This is them as youth. And here's my problem. Oh, well, they end up going to the land of Oz where they meet the wizard. And I think part of my problem with the movie is one, when we're walking into the theater and I brought two of my sons and my husband, that was maybe a mistake. And the one son goes, wait a minute, this is part one? I have to see two parts? I was like, yeah, I didn't know that actually. So we get in the theater, and it's the kind with the comfy seats because I knew this was a long movie, and I had prepared everybody like it's going to be kind of a long movie. And I had looked over about halfway through, and my one son is sound asleep. I was like, oh no. He's sleeping. He's so bored. And then I get in my head and I start worrying about it, And I look over at my husband, and he's kind of like shifting around in his seat because he has some health issues that make he gets like sore and uncomfortable. And I was like, oh, so this is all in my head while I'm watching it. It's like, oh shoot, is this too long? Is it too boring? I don't know, And that did not help. Like, I wish I'd seen it at home. Because I think it was like 2 hours and 40 something minutes. Why are they making movies this long? This is a very long time to sit in one seat for a lot of people. And I am a person who, when I watch shows at home, I pause it and go do stuff for a while and come back. Like, I can't sit that long. So I think my number one biggest problem with Wicked was just it was too long. And there were sections where I got a little like where I was daydreaming. There were just a couple of times where I was like, uh-oh, I'm thinking about something else. But the singing, there's a song, I should know the name because I know you guys all do, but where Glenda and what's her name? Faba. Am I saying that wrong? Anyway, they're like becoming friends and helping each other. Well, Glenda's kind of trying to make her look popular. That's what it was, make her look popular. That was super cute. Enjoyed it. There's a production number in the library when Prince Fiero shows up. Also a great actor. That guy was super charming. I liked him a lot. And that was fun to watch. maybe went on a minute too long, but that was a great number. And then the closing number. What's the song? Oh my gosh. I admit I haven't listened to any of the songs since I left. That was great though. That's when that actress really shone. That's when she really showed her chops. Okay, here's my other issues with it though. One is, did I already say this? I felt like in the original Wizard of Oz, the color is Technicolor. Like literally, it's, even though it's old fashioned and whatever, it was like, boom, you're hit with this color of all the Yellow Brick Road and the talking trees and the black of the Wicked Witch and her flying monkeys. And it was just like a lot of, and this movie I felt like wasn't popping like that. I don't know if it was the lighting, especially in Oz. I thought once they got to the Emerald City, we were going to see a wow, wow, wow. And I didn't really feel that way. I was like, where is that? You can do it nowadays, you know, you could really make that pop. And what was the other thing? There was something else. I had two things. One was that. Shoot. The length. There was one other thing. I don't know, but like when I went to see West Side Story, the Steven Spielberg one, a couple of years ago, I went and saw it on my birthday, and I loved it. But I think it's because I know every song in that musical by heart. I love the music. And so for me, just hearing the refrains and stuff would bring me all this excitement. And I think anyone who has that feeling about the songs from this, they're going to love it. Like, because you're going to hear the little bit of the song and go, oh, that's my favorite song. I love that song. And you're going to be so impressed, you know, with all of that. So I think it makes a big difference when you really love the musical and the music to something like this. Like, because it was the first time I heard any of these songs, it was like, yeah, that's good. But I didn't have that emotional reaction to it. Oh, I know what the other thing was. There's something about when I see a musical live, like at the theater, I will get emotional sometimes by the singing because, you know, they're so good. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm sitting here watching this person, you know, belt this out so perfectly. But with the movie version, my brain is like, this could be altered. This could be, you know, pitch corrected. It could be slowed down. It could be sped up. Like there's so much you can do in post that I know too much about that it takes that element away from me. So it doesn't matter how great of a singer. It's not anywhere near the same as a live, you know, as being live for me. So now, I don't know if this is like spoiler territory or not, but if you want to skip like 3 minutes or something, I don't think it will be. But I was thinking more about, you know, the original Wizard of Oz. When she gets back, you realize, I think it's when she gets back, that the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Lion are her uncles who are there when she wakes up. And it's all a dream. The whole thing was a dream. So is all of Wicked actually taking place in Dorothy's dream? Like all this backstory? Or do they just not worry about that? And then I kind of thought when I saw Prince Fiero, I was like, I wonder if something happens where like, because I have no idea what happens in Act 2 which is the next movie. I have no idea. But I was like, I wonder if something happens where he gets like, he's one of those guys. Because he seemed kind of like the Tin Man to me. That in the original, the Tin Man was like really sweet and kind of funny and silly. And that kind of made me think of Prince Fiero. I don't know. And there was like talking animals in this movie. And there was a lion cub. I was like, oh, is that the lion? Could it be? And now that makes sense that the lion could talk. Because maybe. But wouldn't he have known that Oz? No, maybe not. I don't know. I started to really try to like work out how it goes into the Wizard of Oz, but maybe that's a big mistake. Maybe it doesn't matter, you know? Oh, the other thing that happened was Michelle Yeoh's character, I forget her name, but she was like a teacher of wizarding or whatever, not wizarding, I don't know, witchcraft, whatever. There's a scene where I think they're waiting for the transport to Oz, and she's standing there with, I keep forgetting her name, Alphaba, and it starts to rain, and she puts up her umbrella and she says, "We don't want you getting wet." I was like, oh, because the Wicked Witch of the West in The Wizard of Oz dies by getting dumped a bucket of water on her. But then it makes you wonder about her whole life growing up. Did she know that she can't get wet? I don't know. I know that wasn't much of a review, really. It was more just me jibber-jabbing about it. I don't know. Okay, I can't think anything else about that one. I don't think. But if I do, I'll come back to it. The other show I watched was on, I think it's on HBO. Oops. Yacht. I think the name of it, I could be wrong about this now that I think about it, was Yacht Rock, the documentary. This is a documentary about, well, Yacht Rock. I watched it the day it came out because I love music. I will watch pretty much any music documentary. Someday I'll do a video just kind of telling you about different ones that are totally worth watching because there are a lot of great ones. But this one was interesting because let me put it this way. When the music was new, the kind of music that is yacht rock, which is like Christopher Cross, Michael McDonald, maybe some early Kenny Loggins, that kind of music. The song Sailing Takes Me Away to Where. The song, Toto, some Toto music. Anyway, it wasn't like music that I was personally drawn to because I would have been like a teenager and I was more into, other stuff. But my best friend's stepdad was a huge yacht rock guy. So anytime we were at his house, he'd be playing Christopher Cross and Michael McDonald, and we were like, la, la, la. But I have to admit, I love the song Sailing, and I love Ride Like the Wind, and like a lot of those songs. And yacht rock, the name yacht rock for it, didn't come around until, I think they said like 2005 or 2010. There was a YouTube parody kind of channel that they called it Yacht Rock. So that's where that came from. But this documentary really looks into like the bands that are now considered to be, it's kind of like one of those things where it's after the fact. They're like, these are yacht rock, these are not, and this is why. And they have interviews with Christopher Cross and Michael McDonald, who are like best friends, I think, and Kenny Loggins. And kind of most interesting, some of the guys from the band Toto. And a lot of you might know the band Toto because they sang the song Africa, The one that goes, "It just rains down in Africa," and they sang a song called Rosanna. Sorry, I didn't mean to sing to you, but Rosanna. And that's like all I ever knew of Toto. I would have thought those were the two things Toto ever did. Well, watching this documentary, I learned so much about Toto, and that their members of their band have recorded on like over 5,000 songs, and songs you know by heart. Like so much music, including the entire Thriller album. And one of the guys from Toto wrote a song on the Thriller album. Really interesting. And almost all these bands kind of got their chops working with the band Steely Dan, who I love Steely Dan. And so they were like members of Steely Dan, or musicians who came in and played with Steely Dan. And it was funny because I listened to the director talking about it a little bit, and he had used a lot of Steely Dan music to show how Yacht Rock came about. But Steely Dan hates the name Yacht Rock, hates it, and doesn't want any part of it. And so he was waiting to hear if Steely Dan would give him the rights to use the music. And it's so important to show how this music genre started, that without it, it would not be good. It would not be good. Like, because Steely Dan was really into jazz and all that, and he taught that to these younger guys, and then they started to use jazz, and that's like where it all stems from. And so it was all the way to like the director's going, "I'm gonna have to recut this whole movie because he's not giving me permission." So finally he gets a call from Steely Dan's, and they're two members, I forget their names. And it's weird that I've always only known them as Steely Dan. I don't remember the people's names. But their agent says, "They're not giving you the rights. You're not getting the rights." And he's like, "Oh, what am I going to do? It's so important. And I have Christopher Cross and Michael McDonald. Everybody's on board. We just need that." And so like 3 days later, the manager calls and says, "He's going to call you Monday, and he wants you to record the phone call and use it in the documentary, and then he'll give you the rights." And so the director's like, "Okay, great, let's do it." So Monday comes and goes, and like a month comes and goes, and he's going, "Oh no." And he said he's answering every call that comes on his phone, like, junk calls, block calls, political calls. He's like, I had to answer everything. And so finally one day he gets the call, and he has to flip it over to an app that he has to record the phone call. And when he goes to flip it over, it hangs up on them. And he's like, "Oh no." So he says like 20 minutes later, he gets a call back, and this time he's ready. He's like, answers it, and he goes, "I'm going to give you one more shot, buddy, son," or something like that. And so he gets Steely Dan on the phone, and it's not Steely Dan, it's whatever the guy's name is. But the guy says something that they use in the documentary, and if you watch it, you'll see it, and it's hilarious and so Steely Dan that I was like, "Oh my God, that's so perfect." And so they were able to use the music. But yeah, it's good. It's good. It's good. And there's this interesting part where they show this one sort of melodic piece that was in a #1 hit song. I think it was from Michael McDonald. And they show you all the songs that like used that exact same little riff. And it's like everything. But anyway, I enjoyed that. I thought that was good. And it's not even like my kind, like, I like all music. You can get me to like any music, but I wouldn't like be drawn to that naturally. Although more and more with age I am, I guess. But now I'm like seeking it out again because I'm like, I gotta hear that song. And then I watched a documentary called Fly. I think it was on Hulu. I think this was on HBO or Max, whatever. I think this is on Hulu. And this is about what do they call that? Base jumpers, and they wear those little suits that look like flying squirrels, and they just glide. What is that called? I can't think what that's called, but you know what I mean. They're like wings, and they glide down, and then when they get to a certain spot, they send off a parachute and parachute the rest of the way. I will watch any documentary that has to do with climbing mountains, climbing Everest. That's my jam. But this one, I was like, okay, I'm curious. I don't know what it is about people doing things that are risking their lives. It's like fascinating. Like, I'm just fascinated. But this was a good one because it had beautiful cinematography, like just gorgeous views of these mountains and of the flights, like really awesome. And they basically followed, well, what turned out to be 3 couples, and both members of the couples would do this base jumping. And so you're following their journey and listening to them talk about the risk of it and how anytime they do it, they could die or get injured, and how it's worth it for them. It's always interesting to me, and I thought this was really good. I'd recommend that. I won't tell you anything else because I don't want to give anything away. And then we watched the movie Twisters. Now, I loved the movie Twister. I know it was stupid, but I am a fan of Helen Hunt, and I watched Twisters multiple times, and it was sort of the beginning of CGI, and it looked really good. Between that and Jurassic Park, I think those were early. I mean, you're like, what? So I love Twister, but I wasn't sure about this one. But then it was on one of the streaming, I don't remember which one, but it was on one of the streamers. Might be Hulu. And so I watched this, and I had heard from my son and some people that, it's okay. I don't know. I'm a sucker for it because I was hooting and hollering and laughing. I loved every minute of it. Glenn Powell's just a joy. The woman in this, gosh, what was her name? I'm blanking her name, but she's great. Oh, what's her name from ER, isn't it? She's great. I just thought it was a good time. I know it's silly and stupid, and what they're doing is like, okay, whatever. But I think for a family movie, like if you have family in town and you need something to watch, there is zero, there might be bad words, but I don't remember. But no, like, what is that noise? Oh, what is that noise? Do you hear that noise? It might be a dog fight. I don't know what that is. Crazy. Anyway, there's no like sex in it or anything like that. I won't even say that word. Okay. Well, I did like that. That was fun. It was fun. I'm trying to think. I also watched a show on Disney Plus, and it is called, I just thought of this right now after I talked about Twister. This might be an old show. I have no idea. Industrial Light and Magic. I think that's the name of the show. And what this is about is George Lucas, when he started making Star Wars, he started Industrial Light and Magic, which was where they did the practical effects, like they did the stop motion for the dinosaurs and just really awesome stuff. And it's really about, it's a series. It's not a movie, it's a series. And I found the entire thing fascinating. I really, really enjoyed it, but I do love behind the scenes kind of film stuff. But by the time they got to Jurassic Park, they had the guy from Star Wars, I think, designing the dinosaurs and working on the stop motion. I mean, it was well into it. Like, he had done many, many hours of work on it. And they basically had two buildings at this point, and one was all the practical effects, and one was the guys working on computers and really working on CGI, and which is graphics, computer graphics. So the two guys who were like the young bucks who were doing the graphic stuff were like, I think we can do a better dinosaur with the computer. But they didn't want to like step on the toes, or maybe they just didn't feel like people would accept it. I don't know. But they started working on it secretly while the guy is over here doing the stop motion dinosaur in the other building. And then there was a meeting for the producers, I guess. And they like somehow kind of sneakily showed them the thing that they'd been working on. And basically everybody at that moment was like, stop motion's dead. It's done. It's over. And they had to go to that other guy and say, we don't need it. We don't need what you've done. We're using the computers. I mean, it was really interesting. And they did end up having the practical effects people help them to, because they'd have to photograph what the dinosaur looked like from every angle and everything, and get the movements proper and all that. But it was interesting to watch the changeover and how quickly it happened, how it went from everything's like this to everything's like this in like a heartbeat. That was good. Really interesting. If you're into film and behind the scenes stuff, I recommend that. And I have watched a lot of like the Star Wars behind the scenes stuff in the past, but this was different. It was good. I started watching a show on Netflix called Man on the Inside. Which is Ted Danson. Now I'm wondering if it's called The Inside Man. No, I think it's Man on the Inside. And it's just one of those 28-minute sort of Mike Schur comedy series things, which I like, because sometimes after watching something like this, I'm not quite ready for bed, and so I'll put on something like this. But I thought it was real cute. I've only watched 2 episodes so far, but Ted Danson's character is older, and he's a widow, and he's living alone, and his daughter says, you need to do something to get out in the world or whatever, a project. And he ends up working for a private investigator inside of a senior living home. I don't think it's quite a nursing home or assisted. I don't might not have the right language, but I think it's senior living kind of thing. And so he goes and moves in, and he's the man on the inside, and it's just sort of cute like that and sweet, and of course they learn things and whatever. So that was kind of a fun one. So yeah, I know I've watched other stuff, but that's all I can think of off the top. What I'm looking forward to, I think in the next month, because for Christmas, there's that new movies. There are a couple new movies coming out that I kind of want to watch. One is called, I think it's called The Brutalist. This looks good to me. And it has Adrian Brody. I have some kind of crush on Adrian Brody. I just think he's like super cool and cute. And I don't know what about that guy. I dig Adrian Brody. And I think he has very good taste in projects. Like, I feel like he was in The Pianist. He was in the one with the train. Anyway, he's in a lot of good stuff. But this movie, it seems, now I don't try to investigate movies too much before I see them. I kind of like to go in cold. But I think the basic is he is a Holocaust survivor who flees or goes to, I'm not sure, the United States post-war. And he's an architect. And he's trying to fulfill the American dream as an architect in the United States. And I assume he gets, popular here and goes into brutalist architecture, which was a type of architecture that is post-war and showed the harshness of war in its lines and its materials. And everything about that interests me. So I'm hoping it's good. I'm looking forward to that one. The other one that I'll probably watch just because I love everything to do with music is the Bob Dylan movie, and it's called A Complete Unknown. A Complete Unknown. Which I think is based on the book that I one time listened to a interview podcast from the author of that book. I think that's what I listened to. That was about the moment when Bob Dylan switched from acoustic to electric guitar. And basically, as I recall, and I don't know if this movie is about this, but what I think I heard in the interview, he switched over and his audience kind of turned on him because they didn't think he should be playing electric. Maybe my husband told me that. Now that I think about it, maybe I didn't listen to an interview. But anyway, so that's sort of interesting to me. The other movie that's coming out that when I saw the preview, I was like, I don't have any interest in that. But I've been hearing it's really good. So I can't decide how I feel about it. But it is a movie called Baby Girl. And it stars Nicole Kidman, who is like my husband's favorite. He loves her. And so we see everything she does. But it's weird because it looks like from the preview that it's about a woman who has an affair with a much younger man, like maybe her kid's age. And then he starts kind of fatal attraction situation where he's showing up at her house and doing things. I don't know, maybe it'll be really good. I keep hearing that it's good from people who've seen it at film festivals. Yeah, that'll probably be good. The other thing that I'm looking forward to watching, which I think might start maybe Thursday, it's on HBO. It's a TV show called Hard Knocks. And they follow different football teams. And this season they're following the AFC North. So they'll be following the Ravens, Bengals, Browns, and the Steelers. And they follow them in like real time. So it's like going into the playoffs, the wild card rounds of playoffs, and the Super Bowl. They film behind the scenes, somehow magically edit it together and get it on HBO in a day or whatever. It must be crazy, but I'm really looking forward to that. I like watching sports documentary type things or reality TV, whatever you want to call it. Before the Olympics, I watched that one called Sprint, and it showed you like all the athletes who are sprinting, and it just makes it so much more interesting when you watch the events. I also watched one before the Olympics, I guess 4 years ago. That was about the gymnasts, and that was really interesting. But This will be good, I think. I think that'll be really interesting. Like some really good teams to watch too. Oh, I know the other show that I want to watch. That's coming up soon. It's Jeopardy, but it's pop culture Jeopardy. I'm like, oh yeah, sign me up. It is being hosted by not Michael Shea, the other one, Colin Jost. Colin Jost, who's one of the anchors on the Saturday Night Live news. He is hosting this pop culture Jeopardy on Amazon Prime. I totally want to watch that. I just love quiz shows. Love them. I've been watching The Floor with Rob Lowe. I just like watching that stuff. Anyway, oh, I know the other show we'll probably watch, maybe even tonight. It's a documentary on, I think it's on, I don't know, one of the streamers. And it's called Beatles. Whoops, Beatles. 64. And good grief, I've seen enough Beatles content in my lifetime. But I'll still watch it. Apparently it has a lot of never before seen footage of the Beatles. So, and it's, I think Martin Scorsese, he's a fan of the Beatles, so he talks to them. So I don't know what to expect with that, but I'll watch it because, like I said, any music documentary, I'm in. I think that's all I can think of, you guys. So in the end with Wicked, I did like it. I will see part 2, but I felt it was a little too long. Just a little too long for me. And I do think there's room to trim it a little bit. And I just wanted it to be more, like especially the Emerald City. I wanted to go in the Emerald City, and maybe it was our screening. I don't know sometimes, but I